Welcome back to another episode of Right Here in Mass. Joining me today is Dr. Kathy Martin, the president and CEO of Glenmeadow, a senior living community offering independent living, assisted living, respite care, and home care. Kathy came to Glenmeadow in October 2023 with more than 2 decades of nonprofit leadership experience, primarily in higher education. In addition to all of the senior leadership roles she's had at a variety of institutions and organizations, she also has extensive volunteer leadership experience as well. Kathy, I am super excited to have you here on the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. Kathy has a very impressive and extensive bio that's listed in our show notes for listeners to see everything that she's done throughout her career. But Kathy, I would love to give you the opportunity to share more about you and what you do.
Sure, thank you. As Ashley said, I am the president and CEO of Glenmeadow, which is a senior living community in Longmeadow, Massachusetts, in Western Mass. I've been here about 16 months now, and it was a career shift for me, moving from higher education into senior living. So it's been quite an adventure over the last 16 months, but I've enjoyed every minute of it.
And I'm so curious to hear what it was that caused that shift in your career, going from higher education to senior living and how that really came about really for that opportunity.
Sure, it wasn't anything that was necessarily planned. It was really some opportunities came together in a good timing kind of way. So I spent 25 years in higher education and started as a teacher, a faculty member, and most recently served in senior leadership roles like chief of staff or assistant provost. And those were incredibly enriching experiences for me. And for a long time, had had the intention of being a college president. And I came to a point professionally where I needed to decide if that was still the career path that I wanted to stay on. I had been serving on the board at Glenmeadow for a few years, so it was an organization that I was familiar with. And when the previous CEO announced her retirement, a few people in my circle said, you know, this is something that you should look at. And I'm really glad that I did because there are many more overlaps between higher education and senior living than you might initially believe. But I'm able to draw on the experiences that I have had professionally for Glenmeadow, and it's been really fun.
I'm glad that you mentioned that because that was one thing that came to mind for me as you were sharing is I was wondering if there were any parallels between higher education and senior living. And so I'm curious to hear what some of those might be if you're comfortable sharing.
Absolutely. If you look at it at the highest level, it's a nonprofit. Both organizations are nonprofits. So there is still the importance of a balanced budget. There's an importance of ensuring that in a college, you want to admit students. At Glenmeadow, we're welcoming residents into our community. Colleges talk about student life and student activities. Well, here we have wellness, we have life enrichment. Philanthropy is philanthropy. And what's most important for me is the opportunity to work with individuals on some place on the psychosocial continuum. So working with college students is certainly different from working with older adults, but they're both incredibly enriching. And as one of my mentors likes to say, leadership is leadership. And it was an opportunity for me to take what I've learned in higher ed and apply it to a new population.
I love that. And in addition to the similarities, would you say there were any learning curves or roadblocks that did come with this transition that you had to work through?
There is an incredibly steep learning curve because with a career in higher education, the language of senior living is very new to me. So I've been learning an awful lot about this sector of senior living and the experiences and the needs of older adults and the ways that a community like Glenmeadow can help our residents to thrive and to really move through this phase of their lives with the energy and vitality that we all hope to have.
Definitely. And I love Western Mass. I don't always get to go out that way that often, being a few hours away, but I'm curious to hear what makes Western Mass the perfect area of the state for these seniors to really focus on their independent living and go to Glenmeadow in that sense.
It's such a great question because one of the things that we are communicating is that Glenmeadow is a destination for retirement. It's not only for those who have spent their lives in Longmeadow or in Western Mass, although we certainly do have a number of our residents who are from the local area. As one of our residents likes to say, that Glenmeadow is a cruise ship on land. And I think it's a pretty fitting description for the kind of community that we have. This is an incredibly vibrant, active, energetic community. What we hear most often from our residents about why they decided to move here, it's because they didn't want to deal with what I call life's overhead anymore. They don't want to worry about shoveling. They don't want to worry about what to do when the power goes out or the water heater breaks down at 3 o'clock in the morning. So all of those services are taken care of at Glenmeadow. They have access to upscale dining, casual dining, fitness, anything that you want to do, intellectual engagement. It's all here. And for the families of our residents, it provides some level of peace of mind that their loved ones are being cared for. What we're experiencing more recently is that couples are deciding to move to Glenmeadow because their families are in the area. One example is from a couple from Boston who moved here because their kids moved to Northampton, and it's close enough to them, but not right on top of them either. So we like to think of Glenmeadow and Western Mass as a destination for retirement because the opportunities in this community are incredible. The access to cultural activities, the access to higher education. What we hear a lot is easy access to the highways, which is really helpful as well. So there's no reason not to put Glenmeadow on your list of places to think about for retirement.
I love that. And what would you say might make it different from other communities within the Massachusetts area that families or these individuals may looking to pick it for that reason?
Yeah, Glenmeadow is one of several communities in Western Mass offering independent living and assisted living, and each one of them has their strengths. Um, our community is what I would consider to be an upscale community. We're completing an $11 million renovation to bring our wellness and fitness offerings up to, state-of-the-art pool and fitness center, and that's appropriate for the age group that we are working with. So from my perspective, if someone wants to live and continue to live an active lifestyle, this is a place to do it. And it's a smaller community. We have 140 residents right now in 143 apartments. This is a community that wants to be engaged. They want to take classes from local colleges and universities. They want to have speakers come in. They want to participate in the exercise class every morning, but it's also the kind of community where you can do a lot if you choose to, or you can do nothing. It's really whatever you would like to do on any given day. And while the majority of our residents are retired, we do have a few who are still working. So we are a community that welcomes those over 62. So the reality of our career trajectories now is that we're all probably going to be working a little bit longer. So this would be an opportunity for some to keep working, but not have to worry about all of the things that come with owning a home.
Right. And I think that's really interesting that you said some of your residents are still working, so not necessarily retired, because I feel like people might have, I guess, almost like a stereotype with assisted living communities where they assume that folks might be of the older generation and not working and things like that. But I think that's wonderful that many of your residents are still incredibly active in doing so many things with their career and activities. And like you said, even furthering their education at the local colleges.
And it's true. I mean, we are 75% of our community is independent living. So these are
Mhm.
people who don't necessarily need any additional nursing care. This is like an apartment complex in some ways. But you've brought up another important point that that life doesn't end when you stop working. And this is an opportunity for residents to embrace what's being called the third age. That this is what do you do after 60 when you still have a lot of living left to do? And some people are choosing to take on an encore career, try something new that you've never done before, take up a new hobby. And that's the approach that we're taking at Glenmeadow, that this can be your home base, but there is unlimited opportunities to do what makes you happy and fulfilling after your professional career may be over. And we've all gotten so much better at remote work that there are unlimited opportunities for our residents to be as engaged professionally as they would like to be, or to focus on the things that bring them joy outside of work.
Absolutely. And you brought up a great reminder that there's a difference between assisted living and independent living. So, do you mind sharing more about what those differences are between the two and also explaining respite care? Because I know that's another thing you offer and anything else that Glenmeadow offers too.
Yeah, so if you think about it as a continuum, that some people may want to stay at home as long as they can. Glenmeadow at Home is a home care agency that will provide that additional care in your home, or if you need some help with activities of daily living, as an example. If and when the need comes to move into Glenmeadow, they have two options. Independent living, which as I just mentioned, is like an apartment. And you are with people who are of similar age, are going through similar things in terms of their life path. But then as needs increase, and perhaps there has been an intervening medical event, and additional care is needed in completing those activities of daily living, whether it's washing, dressing, moving about the apartment, medication management. Assisted living is an option for those who may not have the ability to live independently anymore, but need some additional care. And respite care is an opportunity for a short stay at Glenmeadow after perhaps there has been a surgery and a person has been discharged from rehab, but they're not quite ready to go home yet. They can come stay at Glenmeadow for up to 60 days, and we'll give them that additional support also in that social environment that is helpful as you're recovering. And then when you're ready to go back home, you can go back home. But what we also know is that about 70% of the residents who come as a respite resident end up moving in full time.
Wow. I'm sure because it gives them such a great taste of what it is that the community has to offer and
Absolutely.
totally draws them in.
Absolutely. And it is a little bit of a mystery. It's like, what am I getting if I move into a place like Glenmeadow? So, and again, talk about the similarities with higher education. What we experience is the same thing that I experienced in higher education. When someone gets to campus, then they make that connection. And we hear so often, well, I didn't think it was going to be this beautiful. And it's just like when you looked at a college, you know that this is where you're meant to be. And
Mhm.
that same kind of experience often happens for people who are looking at Glenmeadow. It's like, oh, yeah, I can see myself here. And that's how we want people to think about this opportunity is not, I have to move to Glenmeadow. It's I get to move to Glenmeadow. Like, this is great.
Yeah.
This is what I've been waiting for. You work so hard your entire life, and now come here and enjoy your retirement.
Yes, I love that. And I want to go into the $11 million renovation you
Yeah.
mentioned for, I think you said it was the health and wellness facility, which I think is incredible. And so I'd love to hear more about what that project entails and also what made you want to move in that direction of wanting to have this renovation.
Well, I'll start there. So we know that the population who is in retirement now are very active, are more active than the generation that preceded them. The baby boomer generation and all that follow, including you and me, have grown up with activity. And we know that staying active is a great way to manage your health, to engage in some preventative health care. You know, the stronger you are now, the more positive impact that will have when you are, facing a fall or something in the future. So from our perspective, this renovation is not only about meeting the needs of our current residents, but really preparing Glenmeadow for the residents who will follow so that there are features here that will allow residents to stay as active as they want to be in their retirement. So the renovation includes a brand new pool and hot tub that is fully accessible for people of all abilities, a new fitness center that has weight stack machines that function like many cars do. When you get into your car and you hit the button, your seat and your steering wheel adjust to your settings. These machines are made the same way. So our residents won't have to worry about what was my measurement on this machine and what was the weight I did last time. The machine will help you. We also have an open exercise space, a massage room, full locker rooms. But we've also looked at other features of wellness as well. So for intellectual wellness, we have a brand new gorgeous library The salon that we have is moving from the lower level up to the main level for hair and nails. We have a beautiful family living room that has been renovated. Our dining venues have been renovated as well. So we think about everything we do here is wellness focused. It is right now, the focus is on physical wellness in some ways as we really lift up our fitness facilities.
Yeah, and you brought up a great point too about just people living longer and being active longer, that being able to have this renovation is a really big benefit to them of being able to, like you said, focus on their health and wellness and longevity to come.
Right. And I see your medals behind you, so I know that you're a runner
Yes.
as well. And the reality is if people aren't exercising right now, they should be. But it's important that start at any age. There are positive benefits that will come at any age.
Absolutely. And I'm curious to hear what your personal favorite offerings or programs or activities are that Glenmeadow offers.
Oh, there are so many. One of the most well-attended programs we have is our morning exercise class. And it's fun for me to go down and do a workout with the residents. Um, but you know, the opportunities that we have to come together as a community are really enriching for me because you have residents who have lived here for a long time, greeting and welcoming newer residents and helping them get familiar with the community and what we're about. So those are really energizing conversations and energizing events to be a part of. Any opportunity I have to interact with our residents are just so much fun because everybody's got phenomenal stories to tell. And if I could just walk around and talk with residents all day, that would be wonderful. But I'm actually partial a little bit to our new library. It's such a beautiful, cozy space, and it's wonderful to have our residents making use of that space, either just to read, to use the computers that are in there, to have a conversation. We've had some events in there as well. So there's so much happening at Glenmeadow that if you're bored, it's your own fault.
It's exactly what you mentioned earlier too, where people can do as little or as much as they want. And I think it's
Right.
nice to have that flexibility where maybe some days people aren't totally in a socializing mood, and other days they really thrive on being around like-minded people. And I think that's wonderful to have so many options for them to choose from.
And we're looking forward to welcoming the greater community into Glenmeadow as well when the renovation is complete and we have all of our parking spots back for some of these lectures and speakers that we have coming in as well. But it's also a great way to introduce perhaps future residents to Glenmeadow. But our residents aren't place bound at Glenmeadow either. We have outings that go to some of the places that we were talking about earlier that are the strengths of living in Western Mass, whether it's the Springfield Public Forum or the Symphony or the Basketball Hall of Fame. We took a group to the Big E. So there's many ways for our residents to be out in the community as well as welcoming the community into Glenmeadow.
Definitely. And for anyone who's listening who may think it's time for themselves to potentially consider assisted living or independent living, or maybe their parents to consider these living options, what advice would you have for them for just kind of getting started with this process?
Yeah, it's important to keep the families in mind with this question because it's often the children that we hear from saying, I think it's time for mom or dad to move into a place like Glenmeadow. Just like my introduction to senior living, starting that process is a whole new language for those who have never needed to know it before. There are many wonderful resources online for how to begin that process. We are certainly um, part of that group of resources. And if people just want to talk through how do I even begin to approach this, I certainly welcome them to be in touch, and we'd be happy to have a conversation because it's a lot. It's a lot. And when you're talking with your parents potentially about moving out of a family home, and there are so many factors that certainly are about the finances, but there's a lot of emotional factors as well when you think about downsizing a home, and there are impacts for the children as well as for the parents who are leaving a home that they've known for a long time.
Absolutely. And that's one thing that just came to mind for me as you were sharing that is the vulnerability that comes with a transition like this. And I think it's really great that yourself and your team at Glenmeadow are there to support people and their families throughout this time as they make this transition and new journey.
It is a lot. And we talk a lot about how great our residents are, but the staff here are phenomenal. Any opportunity I have to ask residents what their favorite part about living here is, every single time they say it's the staff. And the staff would say the same thing about the residents. They're their favorite part about working here. So the culture that we have here is one of belonging and person-centered and resilient and vibrancy, and the residents and the staff feed off of one another um, based on those values, and it creates a really, really strong community. And it's a great privilege for all of the staff to come to work in our residents' homes. And that's how I think of the entire Glenmeadow campus. Is it's their home, and we get to work here, and we get to hear their stories and be part of this part of their journey.
It almost reminds me from what you're sharing of that whole ideology of it doesn't feel like work if you truly enjoy it and if you're truly having fun. And it sounds like that's kind of the norm for Glen Meadow with everything it is that you do.
I hope that's the case for a lot of our staff. It certainly is for me. I'm enjoying every minute of this. We're not without our challenges like every nonprofit, but this is really an incredible industry, and I hope that college students who are thinking about what they want to do as a profession will seriously think about working in senior living, because there's so much to do, and there's going to be such an incredible need for places like Glenmeadow as the number of baby boomers increases, and the workforce needs to match that need. So there will certainly be opportunities for great careers in senior living.
That's a great point too, especially if there's like a housing shortage that might be coming up as people, as they get older, are looking to, like you said, downsize or move out. Communities like Glen Meadow provide that great opportunity for them to move into a community where everything is taken care of for them. And
Right.
like you said, they don't have to worry about shoveling or landscaping or anything like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it can be such a challenge to think about, oh, what am I going to make for dinner every single day? You don't have to worry about that here. You've got this beautiful restaurant quality menu and setting, and you get to go to dinner with your friends every night, not to have to worry about whether you have the right ingredients in the kitchen or doing the dishes afterwards. So it's really a wonderful experience. That's what we're trying to make retirement and living at Glenmeadow. We want it to be an experience,
Mm.
and really base what we do here around the experience that our residents want to have.
I love that. And as of the time of this recording, it's the beginning of 2025. And I know you mentioned that the fitness facility renovation is happening and you have the beautiful library that has been redone. But I'd love to hear any other exciting like projects or things that are in the works for this year.
Yeah, we're really excited about continuing our intergenerational work, so that our residents have the opportunity to interact with young people. And there's any number of ways that that can happen. We've got a partnership with Square One in Springfield, and their school children come over once a month to interact with our residents. So that's certainly gonna continue and hopefully deepen as we go through the next calendar year to continue to provide those opportunities for that connection, which is so important on so many levels. The other priority for us is to continue talking about how we can redefine aging. And as we've discussed earlier, that conventional wisdom that your best years are behind you when you get toward retirement age, it's really not true anymore. So last year, we launched an opportunity, which we called the Age of Excellence Awards, for members of the wider community to nominate people over 60 who are doing amazing things. So we honored 8 individuals last year, and we look forward to doing something similar again this year as we continue to highlight those who have great professional accomplishments, certainly, but maybe they're giving back to the community. They're giving back to family, whatever that means in this third age that I was talking about earlier. We want to celebrate that. We
Mhm.
often focus on those recognition opportunities for young professionals. And it's great. We need things like 40 under 40. but we also need something like 60 over 60. That it's just inspiring. I mean, everybody at the event last year walked out with a little bit of a lift in their step from hearing the accomplishments of the 8 people that we honored. So we're going to do that again this year. The event will be on September 3rd, and we'll be sharing more soon about how people can nominate those in their circle who they'd like to see honored.
That's such a great initiative because, as I mentioned earlier, it's like there's a stigma around people within a certain age range. And I think what you're doing with the Age of Excellence of being able to showcase all of the incredible things people are doing, regardless of their age, is so important.
Absolutely. And it's fun. It's the difficult task of a panel of community leaders to choose 6 or 8 individuals from those nominations. And having been part of those conversations last year, those are not easy decisions to make because there are so many deserving people in our community. But it's important that we continue to highlight those over 60 in the same way that we do all other age groups.
Absolutely. And you mentioned too having that partnership with the local school, and I think that's great. It sounds like Glenmeadow has a lot of connections with local businesses or other local organizations.
We do, and I'm looking forward to capitalizing on my higher education experience as well to create some partnerships with local colleges and universities, either for interns. We are already a clinical placement site for occupational therapy students or physical therapy students, but there's so much more that we can do, and our residents would love to hear about the research that our local colleges and universities are doing and connecting with students and going to athletics contests or other events on campuses as a way just to stay intellectually sharp.
Absolutely. And one thing I'm curious too, for anyone who's listening to this episode, because you'd mentioned about people getting into this field as their career, which I think is great advice. But for anyone who's listening to this episode who may consider going into this industry or into this field for their career, what advice would you have to give to them?
Well, first thing would be to visit some communities and get a sense of what the range of communities are. So, we are independent living, home care, assisted living, respite care. There are also skilled nursing facilities. There are communities who focus on dementia care. So there are a lot of different ways that you can find a pathway into senior living. But experiencing what it really means to work in senior living is important. Do some informational interviewing with professionals who are already working in the industry. Connect with professional organizations like Leading Age, which is the advocacy group for the nonprofits in senior living, and just start to do some of that research. But more than anything, I would say just start visiting some communities and find that way for your academic passion to match a vocational passion as well. We need accountants just as much as we need nurses.
Mhm.
So there are a wide variety of opportunities for those who are interested in working with this population.
Perfect advice. As we get closer towards the end of this episode, I'd love to ask our guests what their favorite local businesses are to support. So I'm curious to hear what your favorite places are to shop at.
Oh, shopping. That's a different. I might not have to give all that up. No, I love the Longmeadow shops. Here in Longmeadow, they have an Ann Taylor, which is really important for me. But one of the places that I'm frequenting every week, we go every Sunday, is Par for the Course in Westfield, which has simulation golf.
Ooh.
So we have an indoor simulation golf league that goes every Sunday from 10 to 12. So I'm trying to keep my swing sharp before the spring.
Great one. I haven't heard anyone share one of those golf simulators yet, so I think that's a good one to give a shout out to.
Great. We enjoy it so much. And it's a group of about a dozen women, and it's 2 hours on a Sunday. You get together and play golf.
I love that. Kathy, this has been such a great episode, and I've really appreciated having the opportunity to have you come on the show and share everything that you're doing within the Glenmeadow community. And now I would love to have you share with our listeners where they can find you and Glenmeadow online in case they'd like to connect further.
Sure, the email address or the web address is glenmeadow.org. And certainly you can find my contact information on there and learn more about what we're doing here. But if people have questions, don't hesitate to be in touch. And thank you so much for having me.
Yes, my pleasure. And I will link to that website and anywhere else in the show notes that way people easily can click through from there. But thank you again for coming on today's show.
Thanks so much, Ashley.